All right, so some new documents just dropped on Pacer. This time we have Logan Paul's lawyer responding to Coffeezilla's motion that was requesting to have the victims testify remotely. Now, I'm going to give you a brief recap in case you're not caught up on the situation. Logan Paul is being sued by so many people, but there is one lawsuit where he is the plaintiff, and that is a defamation lawsuit against Coffeezilla. Now Coffeezilla is trying to prove his innocence, and remember, the best defense in a defamation case is the truth. So Coffeezilla accused Paul of being a scammer. Paul said, no, I'm not a scammer, I'm suing you. And if Coffeezilla is able to prove that Paul is indeed a scammer, then he wins the lawsuit. And that's why he's bringing in these 3 victims to testify. Coffeezilla wants them to do their deposition remotely because they are broke, they lost all their money to CryptoZoo, and they cannot afford to fly to the States. Logan Paul's lawyers, on the other hand, wants them to fly to the States so they can give their deposition in person, and that would cost a lot of money. So before we take a look at the documents, 2 things I want to say. First of all, make sure you watch all the way through because you will not believe the tactic that Logan Paul's lawyer are about to use. Hereby opposes defendant's motion for leave to take videotape depositions of Duarte Campos de Oliveira, Martin Campos, and Kira Ann Krieg. Defendant's motion, which totals less than 5 pages, betrays a fundamental lack of appreciation for the fact that depositions of foreign nationals in foreign countries are an entirely different animal than domestic depositions of deponents who are subject to the laws of the United States and the jurisdiction of its courts. It is not enough that defendants may want to take a foreign deposition, nor is it enough that a foreign deponent is willing to appear voluntarily without compulsion. Steps must be taken to ensure that the proposed manner of taking deposition is lawful and that there are assurances that the witness will be sworn to testify truthfully. Here, defendants have either failed to consider or have consciously sought to bypass important procedural requirements that must be satisfied before a foreign deposition can be approved. So this is a very interesting point that Paul's lawyers are raising, is that can these depositions be done in accordance with U.S. laws and U.S. courts? Because keep in mind, in America, if you lie on the stand, if you lie while you are sworn in, you are going to jail. Now, is that the case in New Zealand or in Portugal? We don't know. And Coffeezilla's lawyers apparently did not explain that that was feasible or not. Now, those are valid points, and there is a very easy way around this for Coffeezilla, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But let's take a look at what Paul's lawyer said in the next paragraph because they are elaborating on that question. First, defendants ignore that it is their burden to demonstrate that a deposition by remote means would be permitted under the laws of the foreign jurisdiction where the deposition is set to take place. Defendants seek to take the remote depositions of 2 individuals in Portugal and 1 individual who resides in New Zealand, but they make no efforts to demonstrate that Zoom depositions are permissible in those countries. As to the 2 Portugal deponents, at least the answer is clear. Voluntary remote depositions of individuals in Portugal are not permitted, and depositions can only occur in the context of a Portugal court proceeding that has been properly instituted under international law. Thus, defendants' request for approval to conduct the remote deposition of Duarte Campos and Martin Campos pursuant to simple notice must be denied. So this is very interesting. According to Paul's lawyer, none of this can happen remotely because it's not authorized by Portuguese law. The next paragraph just hammers the point home that they won't be able to do a good cross-examination and that these people will not be held to the standards that you face when you are doing a deposition in America. Now, the next point is even more important. Defendants have not demonstrated compliance with FRCP 28 and 30. Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 28 provides that as to depositions that are to take place in a foreign country on notice, such depositions must be taken before a person authorized to administer oath either by federal law or by the law of the place of examination. So basically they're saying that if it's a foreign national, someone from the United States must be there to authenticate and to conduct the deposition in person. So there's a very good reason why Paul's lawyers are doing this. They have a specific purpose in mind, which we'll get to in just a minute. But like I said earlier, there is a clear path to avoid all of these legal problems for Coffeezilla's lawyers. Let me know in the comment section if you know what I'm talking about, because we're going to talk about it in just a moment, but I want to give you guys a little bit of a quiz. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? So the next angle that Paul's lawyers are going to use is that these victims, their testimony is pretty much useless. Take a look at this. They're saying if these depositions are going to take place, that is what should occur for numerous reasons. For one, the probative value of these witness testimony is minimal at best. Defendant's motion suggests that the witnesses are going to testify that they purchased CryptoZoo related cryptocurrency and lost money when the market value of the tokens diminished. But the parties do not dispute that the CryptoZoo project was unsuccessful or that Zoo tokens became essentially valueless when the project failed. The relevant issue in this defamation case is whether the project failed because plaintiffs set out to intentionally scam and defraud people, a fact question on which these witnesses have nothing to offer. If defendants truly believed that these depositions have legitimate probative value, then they should be willing to incur the expense, relatively small in the grand scheme of litigation, of traveling to take the depositions in person. The fact that they apparently are not willing to do so and are seeking to shortcut the requirements for international depositions speaks to the minimal relevance of these witnesses. So I just want to point out something, and I want to hammer this home. Even though they're saying that these testimonies are irrelevant and they don't matter to the case, they don't want this to happen. If they really didn't care, they wouldn't be filing all these motions to oppose to it. So there's something there. So Logan Paul's lawyers are saying, oh, well, this is just a small amount of money. But remember that Duarte Campos de Oliveira said he couldn't afford it. He said that the trip was $1,200 round trip. And at that price, you're probably staying in a Motel 6. And it would require 30 hours of travel time, which he would have to take time away from work, which he cannot afford to do. So it might be a small amount of money to Logan Paul, but to these victims, it's a lot of money. Now, Logan Paul's lawyers are proposing an alternative, but this alternative would be way more expensive for Coffeezilla. Take a look at this. Here, the only justification defendants give as to why these depositions ought to be conducted by remote means is that it would be expensive and difficult for the witnesses to travel to the United States. But nobody is demanding that these witnesses travel to and to appear in the United States to give testimony, nor would the federal rules allow either party to compel them to do so. The alternative to a remote deposition is not that the witnesses travel to the United States for the deposition, but rather that the parties' counsel travel to the witnesses and take in-person deposition where the witnesses are located in compliance with the laws and procedures of the witnesses' locale. Now, this is a very interesting proposal by Logan Paul's lawyers, because think about this. It would have been about $1,200 or more to fly the Oliveiras from Portugal to the United States. Now, how much do you think would it cost to fly Coffeezilla's lawyers from the United States to Portugal and back? It would cost so much more than that, because you have to pay the lawyer for every single hour that they are traveling, unless you find a really kind lawyer that's willing to not charge you for their travel time, which might be possible, but it would be unusual. The entire trip from Texas to Portugal would take at least 46 hours. That's on the low end if you include the depositions. So lawyers are usually $500 an hour. It might be a little less, it might be a little more. Now, Coffeezilla has 5 lawyers. He has so many lawyers, it doesn't even fit on a single screenshot. If he has to bring all 5 of these lawyers, that's $115,000. If he only has to bring 2, that's $46,000. Either way, that is a truckload of money. Money that Logan Paul can afford with no problem. Coffeezilla, not so much. And even if Coffeezilla wins this lawsuit, which I'm pretty sure he will win, a defendant in a defamation lawsuit is generally not automatically entitled to recover attorney fees, even if they win the case. So he could get completely bankrupt, all while being perfectly innocent. And that's how the American court system works. Unfortunately, most of the time, it's not about who's right or wrong. It's about who has more money to burn. Now, this brings me to the point that we talked earlier in the video, there is one clear path to success that would cancel out all these problems. Now, I hope you guys wrote in the comment section below, and I'm sure you guys were thinking the same thing. It's very simple. Just find different victims. You have all these hurdles over here because the victims are in New Zealand and they are in Portugal. Just find victims in the United States. Then it's going to be incredibly simple to get these depositions. And here's the thing. A lot of people lost their money to cryptos, so I'm sure there's some victims that are in America and are willing to testify. That is one clear path to success, and it would cancel out all these problems with having the witnesses come to the States or having Coffeezilla's attorneys go to Portugal. That is, in my opinion, the simplest path to victory. So that's it for the video. The judge will respond to this. The judge will make a decision. And of course, I will inform you about that when it happens. And the best way to make sure you don't miss out on that video is to subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers. And if you enjoy the content, you like the presentation, please subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. Thank you in advance, and I'll see you guys on the next one.